Hello friend, my name is Nick and you have now entered into the world of the Night Owl. So sit back, grab your drink and snack of choice while we dive deep into a murder case that I bet even you haven't heard of before. But before we do, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe button a couple of mice, that would make the Night Owl very happy. Otherwise, enjoy. We're about to go on a journey that is met with the murders of 28 young men, including torture, rape, and then eventually death. A journey that has a twist at the end that you only see in the movies. The story is so real, so graphic, that even I thought it had to be the work of a Hollywood producer. This story is the story of the Candyman. So Candyman, that's where the story begins, right? But I bet you want to know who the Candyman was. Well, the answer you're looking for is Dean Corll. We can just refer to him as Dean for the telling of this story. Dean was born on Christmas Eve in Fort Wayne, Indiana, 1939. Dean's parents split up when he was just a young boy. At the time, he still acted and seemed just like any normal, average kid. Little did we know of the monster he would become. After his parents split, his mother moved him to Houston, Texas, the same location he would commit an estimated 28 murders in total. But we'll get back to that in a bit. Dean's mother owned a candy store in Houston, where he would often give out free candy to kids coming around the store. This information would lead to the name given to him, known as the Candyman. Eventually, the candy store would go out of business after his mother's third failed marriage, causing her to move to Colorado and leaving Dean behind. Dean eventually took steps toward becoming an electrician because everyone needs a job, right? At this point, the year was 1970, and Dean was about 30 years old. 1970 would also be the year Dean would take the life of his first victim, an 18-year-old college freshman named Jeffrey Konen, on September 25th, 1970. Jeffrey vanished while hitchhiking with another student from the University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. He was dropped off alone, thus the perfect setting for the Candyman to take action. Dean would then move into the same apartment where he would start his reign as America's biggest serial killer to that point in time. Dean was considered different because his friend group consisted of young boys. Two of his closer friends were Elmer Wayne Henley and David Brooks. They would act as his accomplices for some of the crimes that Dean committed. You will see later on in this video why it's so important to mention the names of these two, should I say, friends of Dean. Dean targeted young men between the ages of 9 to 20, without anyone suspecting. Two families had lost both their sons to the twisted acts of the Candyman. So how was he so successful in committing an estimated 28 murders without any problems? First, let's look into how he was able to trap them in the first place. Dean often would lure young men, offering them a good time at a house party, or even just to offer someone a ride. Which wasn't weird. I mean, it was the 70s. Today, yeah, that's kind of weird. I would advise you to stay away from someone just randomly offering you a ride. But again, this was the 70s. These were different times, or so you would think anyways. After they arrived at his home, he would restrain them with either force or deception. After he succeeded, he would take them back to a separate bedroom where he would then proceed to torture, beat, and rape them. He had what he called a torture board. The torture board was just a simple piece of plywood with straps attached to it and plastic covering the carpet floors beneath it. He would use this board to tie down his victims, then handcuff them. After they were completely defenseless, he would keep the victim there for hours or even days before killing them, usually using strangulation or shooting them with a .22 caliber pistol that he often carried around. Dean would do countless things to torture his victims, but some are just too gruesome in detail for this video. If you would like to learn more at your own interest, it can be found easily on the internet. After killing his victims, he and his accomplices, which were two of his close friends Henley and Brooke, would bury the victims in different locations around the area. 17 of the victims were buried in a boat shed that the three of them rented. At least 6 others were buried on a beach in the Bolivar Peninsula. One more victim was buried on a beach in Jefferson County, and finally 4 more victims were found One of Dean's best friends, Elmer Wayne Henley, brought 2 friends over to Dean's home, one of which was Henley's girlfriend and the other was just a man named Tim. They proceeded to drink and do drugs until they fell asleep. This sudden intrusion upsetted Dean, so when Henley awoke, he found himself tied up to the torture board with his friends at his side. His friends were tied down with electrical tape over their mouths. Henley figured the only way to save his own life was to try to convince Dean that if he let him go, he would aid him in raping and killing his own girlfriend and other friend Tim. So Dean agreed and untied him. Dean then instructed Henley to rape his girlfriend while Dean would rape Tim. As Dean proceeded to try to rape Tim, Tim began to fight back for every inch of his life. So much so that Dean began getting so frustrated that he just left the room. Henley, seeing an opportunity, the only one he would get, began looking around the room for a weapon. Eventually, he found the same .22 caliber pistol he had seen Dean use time and time again to take the life of so many young men, and decided just to wait until Dean re-entered the room. As Dean re-entered the room, Henley began to fire the first of 6 bullets into Dean, killing him. His own friend turned on him. Let's be fair though, Dean had turned on Henley first and was a mass murderer to begin with, so who could blame him? I never saw this coming. Straight out of Hollywood, right? Anyways, after this, Henley would openly admit to police about his involvement in the murders and would help them to locate at least 28 bodies that they had buried. The Houston police were called out by the public outcry because they never looked into any of the 28 missing persons reports. Police had decided just to mark them as possible runaways, which doesn't make sense. I mean, come on. 28 different young men from the same area can't all just run away. Like I said before though, 2 different families had lost 2 of their sons, and for some reason this was just written off as runaways. I personally can't blame the public for their anger towards the lackluster investigation done by authorities at the time of the disappearances. However, eventually a trial was held. After the trial, David Brooks was held responsible for 1 murder charge and sentenced to life in prison, while Elmer Wayne Henley was convicted of 6 different murder charges and was met with 6 99-year charges. He wasn't held responsible for the murder of Dean because it was considered an act of self-defense. In the end, I'm glad that everyone involved came face to face with their punishment, came face to face with their demons. But I would like to say this, the FBI and CIA both estimate that there's at least 50 serial killers still on the loose at any given moment. That's truly horrifying to think about. So please be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the people you make yourself available to, and stay safe, my friends. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in stories like this, then you found the right channel. So if you wouldn't mind smashing that like and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, and God bless. Love you guys.